Hello and welcome. My name is Sanjay Soni. Here's a microlearning readiness video. Let's get started. So to kick off, let me welcome Debbi to the studio. Hi Debbi, how you doing today?
I'm great, Sanjay, thank you.
Awesome. So what do you do at Microsoft?
Well, I'm the product marketing manager for SQL Server 2017, and also I work on Azure Database migration.
All right. So my first question is, why do you think customers should modernize to SQL Server 2017?
There are a lot of reasons that customers are modernizing to SQL Server 2017. And one of those reasons is actually that they are thinking about how they want to run their infrastructure across both their own data center and then if they have data center at partners. They might also be dealing with companies that they're integrating because they've had a lot of merger and acquisition activity. So they want to bring that data in-house and integrate it with existing systems. Another thing that customers are dealing with is just a huge explosion in the volumes of data that they're collecting. And this oftentimes is leading to capacity issues and the need to really rethink their overall hardware and software structure. Some other things that might be driving the need to refresh are the fact that the regulatory environment continues to change. So if the customer is in a highly regulated industry, or perhaps they deal with citizens of the EU and are subject to GDPR, they have a lot more regulatory requirements than ever before, and they need to keep up with the latest in security and compliance features to make sure that they can attain those standards. And then one of my favorite reasons that customers are upgrading is actually to get to the latest version of SQL Server in order to enhance their application with things like new programming features and the ability to take advantage of machine learning inside their database. And something else that's coming up this year that's a really big reason to modernize is the actual end of support for SQL Server 2008 and 2008 R2, which is just a huge and widely used version still at our customers. And so if you don't know what the end of support is about, the big thing to know is that Microsoft stops regular security patching for these features for the database after end of support. So after July of 2019, you won't be able to get a patch if a new security vulnerability is found. You'll be able to get the patch for new versions, but not for the old versions.
So for the customers who are on SQL Server 2008 R2,
yeah, 2008 and 2008 R2, both are reaching end of support in July. And so if you don't have the latest in security patching, you actually might have trouble meeting those compliance standards that we talked about earlier, whether it's regulations or maybe industry compliance, like say PCI DSS. And some customers choose to attack this by securing around the system rather than modernizing. And they beef up their firewalls and they do a lot more network isolation. But actually those things might be just as expensive and troublesome as just modernizing the system and having the latest in security. So really a lot of great reasons to think about modernizing. But then, as I mentioned, there are tons of benefits for your application as well when you modernize. We make investments in the database engine with every release and the way we compile and run queries that make it just run faster. So frequently, customers get a big performance boost just by upgrading. And then, of course, there's all the new features that we talked about, whether that's new security features or the ability to do AI and machine learning in your database. And this is really some of the stuff that your application can benefit from if you choose to upgrade.
I see. So let's say a customer wants to modernize. They like this idea.
Yeah.
How easy is it?
Well, we've got some tools to really help with the process. So let's say that a customer wants to modernize from an older version of SQL Server to SQL Server 2017 on Windows. One of the tools that they might take advantage of is called Data Migration Assistant. And this is essentially an upgrade advisor. It takes a look at your old database installation and it sees what features you're using, and it can advise you about the ones that might cause issues when you upgrade and give you some remediation steps as well. Another tool that customers, especially with really high performance systems, like to use for upgrade is called Data Experimentation Advisor. And what it does is capture a workload on your old SQL Server version and replay it on your new test environment so you can see what the performance impacts of upgrading will be. And if there are additional ways you could optimize that performance in SQL Server 2017. It'll give you some suggestions.
I see.
And finally, there's actually, doing the upgrade or moving the data. And we've got a couple of different ways to accomplish this. If it's a system that can go offline for a little while, you might be able to do an in-place upgrade. If it's a system that's very high availability, you can actually take advantage of log shipping from your old system to your new system to make sure that you're able to keep the old system online and keep the two in sync until you're able to do a cutover. And then there are lots of simple ways just to get your data from point A to point B, including a backup and restore, bulk import, SSIS, lots of options for getting your data from one place to another. We even have a way for customers who are thinking of modernizing a database besides SQL Server to get to SQL Server 2017. With the SQL Server Migration Assistant, or SSMA,
Yes.
you can take your data from a data management system like an Oracle, a Sybase, DB2, and get it to SQL Server 2017 on Windows.
I see. See, this is much easier than what it used to be when I was a DBA a long time ago. The upgrade was not easy at all.
Oh, we're trying to make it easier and easier.
Of course.
And in fact, the process is very similar for upgrading to SQL Server 2017 on Linux. You can also take advantage of Data Migration Assistant and Database Experimentation Advisor. You don't have quite as many options. You can't upgrade in place, of course, since it doesn't run on Linux in the older versions. But you can still do that backup restore or bulk import kind of data motion, or you can use a backpack file, which is like a zip of your data and your all of your metadata from your database that can be restored in SQL Server 2017 on Linux.
I see. So, of course, the next thing is, what about customers in the cloud? How easy is it for them as well?
Yeah. So there is a version of Data Migration Assistant that takes all that knowledge that can compare your old database installation to the latest version and adds capabilities to get to Azure SQL Database and as well data motion that can get your data from on-premises into Azure. So we have a great extension of the tooling set there. It also works with Azure Migrate to help move your app as well. So just the whole suite. But it's not just about tooling. Customers also have, they have licenses on-prem, and they're wondering how those translate. And so there's a new licensing construct called Azure Hybrid Benefit that lets customers reuse their SQL Server licenses in the cloud. They can actually take those licenses to SQL VM or to our fully managed Azure SQL Database and reuse them there. And when you combine Azure Hybrid Benefit with reserve capacity pricing, you can save up to 80% over what it would cost you to run managed SQL in other clouds. So Azure is just a great deal for customers with on-premises license and software assurance.
I see. So you talked about SQL DB managed instance very briefly. So when do customers really consider SQL DB MI?
Yeah, so let's just look first at SQL Server, because we really believe it is the best and most economical destination for your on-premises SQL Server database if you're ready to move to the cloud. For one thing, it's the same code base as SQL Server, so you get full feature compatibility regardless of which version of SQL database you move to. And for another, it's got great TCO. There's a Forrester TEI study actually that estimates that customers get around 212% return on investment from migrating from SQL on-prem to SQL database. And it has all the same great intelligence and security features that the on-premises version has, with some added tools that are just for Azure, things that take advantage of machine learning to keep your performance and security optimized. For instance, Azure Threat Detection actively monitors your SQL database and looks for things like repeated unauthorized login attempts, so it can alert you in real time if there's a security issue. And all that comes with, of course, the built-in intelligence capabilities that SQL Server has as well. And so back to your question about managed instance,
Yes.
There are 3 different ways that you can get SQL Database. One is just a single database, just the surface area and programming capabilities of a single SQL Server database. And another is an elastic pool. Elastic Pool lets you pull together many single databases and lets them share resources within a single performance tier, so it's great for things like multi-tenant apps. But managed instance is really the best destination for a lot of customers who are moving on-premises databases to Azure because it has the full surface area of an instance. And some of the other great things about it are that it actually gives you not just that database isolation, but actually VNet support. So you can make it fully compatible with your on-premises network and keep it secure, just like you would a database in your data center.
I see.
Yeah.
Great.
So all that we think makes Azure SQL Database really just the most seamless path to the cloud for on-premises SQL customers. Great TCO, full feature compatibility, and as I mentioned, things like VNet support and database isolation to keep your database secure.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all this great information, Debbi.
Thank you for having me, Sanjay.
So let me welcome Bob Ward to the studio. Hi, Bob. How you doing?
Sanjay, how's it going?
It's a great pleasure to have you with us today.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. So what do you do at Microsoft?
Well, I'm an architect in the SQL engineering team. I do a lot of customer evangelism and customer adoption and kind of translate all the great work we do in engineering to our customers and to the field.
All right. So I know you've been involved with SQL Server for a long time.
25 years.
25 years.
Exactly,
You've written so many books and everything as well. So can you please talk about the overall value of SQL Server 2017?
Yeah, if you look at this slide right here, this is really kind of the overall value of what we do for SQL 17. You got to remember that we just came off the heels of SQL 16 when we built SQL 17. So you need to make sure you understand that SQL 16 capabilities like query store and always encrypted and things of that nature are in the 17 product. But we've been now almost a year and a half after we shipped SQL 17. And if you think about its value, number one thing comes out as platform of choice. Like SQL and Linux, right? Yeah. So that's just the number one thing that we do. And we're going to talk a lot about that. You're going to hear that like all the rest of this morning here about SQL and Linux and platform of choice. But performance and security are really critical to us. And so you'll see also today about why that's a big deal. And we always put that in our releases. And we're doing interesting things like R and Python with SQL Server. That's amazing, right? Wow, that's one other thing at the bottom of the slide is really important to know is that we believe in, if you think about modernizing in SQL, in-memory technologies are important. Things like column store and in-memory OTP, those are very, very important for us. And so you're going to hear a little bit about that as well. And then the last message about consistency is very important. I heard you and Debbi just talking about migration and adoption, including Azure. And you think about people listening today with their T-SQL skills. That T-SQL surface area is something we feel very important about, and it's available and the same across the private and public cloud offerings we have. And things that we do to build on the enhancement of SQL 17 always extend that T-SQL language. So that's kind of the overall value of what we do. So.
Okay, let's keep going.
Sure, yeah. Think about, that's why, right? Like why would you consider SQL 17 overall? Yeah. But I always like to talk about features and capabilities. Yeah. And this kind of diagram really kind of gives you, if you look at it but kind of clockwise, of the key new features we put in SQL 17. So platform of choice, SQL on Linux and containers and Windows. I mean, can you believe we did SQL on Linux? Yeah. I've been here for 25 years, and I never thought I'd see the day that we were going to do something like that. And it's interesting. It's been
and it actually works, I heard.
It actually works. And you know what? You're going to hear today a little bit in a second of why we did it, and then maybe later today, all the internals, like how do we do it, and how do you use it, and you're going to love the deployment experience. It's kind of crazy. But it's interesting. I was just at a big customer event, and people don't even know that we still have done it. We've still shipped it. And so we're trying to get that word more out about SQL on Linux. I'll talk in a second about why that's important. Yeah. Performance is still important, and we want to be fast in the SQL engine. Right. But we feel very strong about investing in the automation of performance. And so you're going to hear more about some intelligent performance capabilities. Yeah. Kind of think about like the automatic performance things for you have to do less tuning in SQL. And so we'll talk about adaptive query processing and automatic plan correction. Those are two big features coming in SQL 17 that are in the product today. Availability is still important, so I'll talk about this really nifty trick we've done where you can do something called clusterless availability group. That's a word we made up. It's a new word. And then you look at the bottom right hand of the diagram here. It's all about developers, and we're going to talk about some new and innovative things we've done to help developers. So, if you're walking away today and thinking about what's new about 17 that's unique and different, this slide kind of summarizes it. And I can't wait to kind of dive into some of the details and show you and even demo some of this stuff.
I see. And I've heard about some kind of support for Red Hat.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. So let's talk about why we did SQL Server on Linux. It's not because we're going away from Windows. It's far from it. Right. I love Windows Server. I mean, I've been using it for 25 years, right? But we have a lot of people in the marketplace, customers and partners like Red Hat that said, hey, we think SQL is a great product. It could supplant some of our other competitor products, your competitor products out there that are running on Linux. Yeah. Can't you do a SQL on Linux thing? And so a couple years back, we took a look at it. Our team made a big investment in it. And you hear us talk about Linux today a lot, but again, it's not because we're just doing Linux and that's the only thing. We want it to work on both platforms and all platforms. So we'll give you choice. And if you look at this chart right here, you kind of look at it, it's Windows Server, it's Red Hat, SUSE, and Ubuntu. Those are our official Linux distributed platforms that we support. And then, containers is a big deal. We're gonna show you some really fun stuff later today about how SQL works on containers. But Sanjay, it's really important for you to understand about this message about compatibility. I heard Debbi talking about migration some and about migrating from an older version of SQL to SQL on Linux.
Yes.
Well, it's true that you have all those tools for SQL Server, but imagine a world where you could just back up your database on Windows for SQL and just restore it on Linux. It's because it's compatibility with choice. So your tools, your applications, and we're going to show you a little bit later today on why that's a true statement. I can deploy SQL on Linux very quickly, and then my apps, my tools like Management Studio can just point to it and just work seamlessly. And so this is why it's a consideration for customers, is that it's not just about Linux, but it's a platform of your choice where you want to go.
I see. Thank you so much for sharing this information with us, Bob.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you for watching this video. Learn more about this and other topics at azure.com/SQLDW.